So I'm Hallie Evans, and I'm here today with Dr. Richie Flowers. How are you?
I'm doing great, Hallie. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here with you to talk about this topic. We're going to be talking about course evaluations, and I'm excited to talk about this with you because Dr. Flowers is our incoming program director at Middle Tennessee School of Anesthesia, but he is also the chair of the education committee for the AANA. So there is a lot to discuss and dive into. We all know we get good evaluations, bad evaluations, and as faculty, we're really looking at it today from our perspective. At some schools, state universities, some private universities, it really makes a difference on your ranking and tenure and all of that. At other schools, it doesn't have such an impact for faculty. So it really can play a big role as a faculty member in your promotion and your income, and it weighs a lot on your emotions as well. So schools don't use standardized evaluations across the board. Some schools have better systems, some have less better systems. And I just wanted to get your opinion on what you think makes a good evaluations, different Likert scales, numbers for excellent, good, and all of that. I have a few examples here. We can look at different questions, but
Sure.
yeah, so
Thank you, Hallie. Yeah. I think, evaluations are, they're a double-edged sword, right? They're extremely important from both a faculty perspective, even a student perspective, and then from the perspective of administration as well. I think, for, as you mentioned, for promotion and tenure, it's one reason, but I think even more important maybe is for our own professional development, right? When we do something, we want to do it well. And so we want feedback on that so we can improve. And I think the double-edged sword of that is we want feedback, but then sometimes when we see that feedback, it can sting a little bit, right? Good evaluation versus bad evaluation, I think a lot of it has to do with the person filling it out, right? At the time they fill it out, are they, and we've all seen the evaluations where 40% of them are going to be all fives, right? Or all threes or all fours, whatever, if you're using a 5-point Likert scale. And then you may see other ones where they took time and they went through and you can see some variation in the numbers where they actually put some thought into it. And then most of them include some free text, which is really where we get those daggers occasionally, right? Is in the free text comments. And, we've all seen examples of people who, faculty who, you're going over your evaluations at the end of the semester or whenever it is, and you read one comment that's like, oh, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, this course was awesome. And then 3 comments down, in your comment summary, it's like, this person should never teach again. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's the one you take to heart. You could have an overall score, mean score of a 4.7 on your course and 12 good comments, and that one bad comment is what you take away from it.
You brought up a really interesting point, the Likert scale, 4 points versus 5 points. And so a lot of people are going away from the neutral category.
Yeah,
and
so easy just to check.
Right, so easy. And I usually, when I make a survey for research or for students, I now avoid the neutral category for that reason. It's so easy to just check neutral and be like, yeah, this was okay. And I like to force people to make a decision. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great idea. I think, I'm guilty of that.
Oh, me too. That's why I stopped putting it for other people.
I'm ambivalent about this, so I'm just going to put neutral, right? Yeah. So I think we do it all the time. And so leaving that option out. And that's strategic, right? Yeah. You're somewhat forcing people to make a decision.
Yeah. Was it good or was it fair? Just decide, right?
I think messaging is something that's really important when we talk about, because who's doing the evaluations and why are we doing it? It's for the same person. Students are completing the evaluation for us, and there's a benefit to us as faculty and improvement.
Yeah.
Right. When it's constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Okay. But then the benefit is ultimately also to the student, because if I'm improving my course, then they're getting a better product, which is kind of why we're here, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of messaging that has to go into evaluation, the process with students, especially when they're new, to say, here's why we're doing this. And really spending time with them to say, when you're filling this out, we want your constructive criticism, but we don't want your mean-spirited criticism. I think, if there's something that's truly that bad, I think that should be dealt with before an evaluation at the end of the semester. So I think giving them the freedom and having an open line of communication with faculty and administration to say, if there's something not going well in a course, don't wait until the end of the semester to let us know that this person should never be teaching the course again.
Sure.
Right. Those kind of comments, I think. Yeah. And I think that's very helpful in getting evaluations back that are constructive and are helpful in process improvement, if you will.
And I tell my students, I want to be the best teacher for you. And I think that's what's different about nurse anesthesia and professors in nurse anesthesia is everyone knows we could get a bigger salary if we were practicing clinically. So we really have to want to teach to be teaching. And I think I see this in the nurse educator track. We are seeing this really impressive and exciting shift in educators where we have these amazing clinicians now that are deciding maybe they're a little burnt out or just want to dip their toe into education, but it's not people that are like not wanting to practice and just teaching. It is phenomenal practitioners now wanting to get into education and pass the skills and keep the level of CRNAs like superior. So these are people that want to teach and want to keep the profession to this high standard. So they want to be good teachers. And like you said, that constructive criticism is really what will get them there. I pulled some evaluations and just want to get your idea on some of these questions too. So one thing that I thought was great, that I won't say what schools, what comes from, but I loved the question, and this was the first question on one of these. What grade do you expect to receive in this course? What do you think of that?
It's a tough question. Mm-hmm. And I think, knowing our student population.
Right.
Very high achievers.
Yeah.
Some of us we might call overachievers.
Yeah.
In many ways. So for predominantly, I think the answer to that question is always going to be an A.
Yeah.
There's 2% of the world that's in the nurse anesthesia student population that's going to say, you know what, I'm happy with a B.
Yeah.
Most of the time, though, it's like you got a 98 and questioning why you didn't get 100.
Yeah. But if they're filling this out at the end of the semester, probably upset that they realize they're going to get a B. And then you realize they're the one that gave you. Would that be helpful?
I think it can be helpful from an advising perspective.
Yeah.
For someone that it's maybe he's going to come to you and say, I didn't do as well in this class as I thought I should have. Or I thought I would do better and I didn't. Yeah. I think that's where it really is helpful in advising to them to have that and say, well, you know what? Did you put forth the effort that was required, or was it something else? Yeah. So I like that question.
Yeah. And then that kind of goes along with the question, I think, if you found the materials in the course helpful, that's always nice to know because, sometimes I think people leave up not so much textbooks, but reading materials or articles that are important, but maybe are becoming a little outdated, and there's some better literature there.
I've seen another question along that same line that asks the question of, on a Likert scale, did you utilize the materials that were made available to you?
That's another great question.
I think that goes along with those.
Yes, right. Were they helpful? But it doesn't matter if you didn't use them. Yeah, I think that's a great one. And then communication with the faculty, I think is so important. One of the best pieces of advice I got as a college student, I kind of coasted my way through high school, and college was pretty eye-opening for me. But had I not gotten this advice early in college, it would have been a whole different experience. As the professor said, just to the whole class, stop by and get to know your professors. Yeah. And he said, it doesn't matter what you ask us something you already know. But, and so I did that, and it was like a game changer for me. Yeah. So communication is so important. And like you said before, to reach out if you're having a problem and make yourself accountable with your professor, that you feel like you can reach out to them.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think when you do that, and especially new educators, there's new educators watching this, I think you get really worried about evaluations. We see that with clinical evaluations, with clinical preceptors. I think the same way. It's like they're worried that if they do something bad, well, it's the flip side, right? As a new educator, you want to be really good. You want them to like you as a teacher, as a course director. And then, so you're really worried about that. So maybe they over communicate. Yeah. But I think from a student perspective, it is really important that they get to know their people. And I think when you have that open line of communication, I think you get better feedback on the course evaluations. I think the people who are directing courses and teaching, who have open lines of communication and are very transparent with the students, I think overall there's more honest feedback on their evaluations than there is someone who's maybe a little aloof.
Yeah. Along the lines of evaluating the professor or instructor, I really liked the question too, and I only saw this on one of the evaluations, is that I feel the instructor is an expert in this content.
That's tough because we all know every program at some point, and usually most of the time, is a little short-staffed. Yeah. And we're always bringing in new people to teach who we know when we go to nurse anesthesia school, we don't learn to teach. Yeah. Right? It's why you have this great program that you have.
Nurse educator.
Exactly. So sometimes we do, we have especially one-off lectures. Yeah. Maybe that lecture that no one wants to do, fluid balance. Yeah. Acid base, right?
What's so
okay, we have a lecture for you. It's a great lecture. Why don't you teach this? And they're not always content experts. So that question, I think I have to ask, what are we looking for?
Yeah. Well, I would almost say it's a perception question. Right. Because I would then think, how can I come across better that I know this material? A funny story is every school I've ever worked for, the first question is, will you teach pathophysiology?
That's fun.
One of the students in the education track, he's starting at a new school, and he's starting a nurse anesthesia program that doesn't start till next year. And he told me they didn't really ask him, but now all of a sudden he's teaching pathophysiology. And I said, oh, of course you are, And that class, for those of you that don't know, always gets bad evaluations. It's very hard to get a good evaluation teaching.
I think the point with questions, good questions versus bad questions on an evaluation, I think you have to look at an evaluation, number one, holistically, and number two, from a perspective of what information do I really want to gain as an administrator? What information do I need to help with professional development of faculty? Mm-hmm. And then what information does the faculty need to improve the course? Right. So I think you have to be, and then putting the glasses of a student on who's going to be the end user of this evaluation, and kind of looking at that and going, how are they going to interpret this question? Right? Because, it's just like test questions. Yeah. There's good questions, there's bad questions. So the way the question is written and worded, it's like research, we could word questions in an evaluation to get the answers we want. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or we can word them to get true or maybe valid information that's going to be helpful.
Yeah.
And I think including students in that conversation when you're creating an evaluation is wise, because my 50-something-year-old brain may perceive a question very differently than a 25-year-old
Yeah.
student.
One of the things I think we need to include students in more that you bring up that I've just become a parent with the nurse educator students is course objectives. You know, sometimes they're written to sound so intelligent, jumbled with so many extra words.
They don't mean anything.
Right. They don't mean anything. They're not clear.
Yeah.
Students don't really understand them or pay attention to them, and they don't understand how they cross map to the bigger picture. And so we have this question that the course content is consistent with the stated learning outcomes or objectives. And is that even necessary? You know what I mean? If they don't even understand or really haven't been explained the course objectives other than reading them off a syllabus, but if they don't understand the bigger picture of them, I do think that's one thing we can do better as educators to make them understand like what the course was really about, what they were really supposed to gain from it, so that when they do fill out the evaluation, they know what we're really asking about.
Yeah, it brings it all together.
Yeah. And then I did just want to go through, maybe you have some stories to tell too, but, you know, some constructive versus non-constructive examples of evaluations, of feedback written in, I'm sorry. So, you know, we have one instructor here who just got the most glowing evaluation ever. I believe, you know, we were told she is an angel sent from heaven. And so that's wonderful. And we love hearing that. But what would even be more helpful is, why is she an angel sent from heaven? Right? What characteristics of her teaching make her wonderful so that we can all learn and exhibit those characteristics? Have you heard anything that's...
Well, I think you get that a lot, right? You go, this course was amazing. This course was great. And, you know, we see it in clinical evaluations. You did great today. Oh, good. What does that mean?
Right.
Did great on what? Right? I know I'm not great. It's my first week in clinical.
Yeah.
Right? So I think, you know, being very specific is good. You know, you want to see the ones of like, this person was responsive in my questions.
Yeah.
They did a great job of explaining difficult concepts.
Yeah. Here's
Those
one.
kind of things.
Yeah. Very organized and clear in her directions, demonstrates a passion for the subject matter. Learning activities are relevant to the course material. Assignments inspire critical thinking and further research. That's wonderful. That gives us a lot of information. Another one about keeping the content up to date. So those are great. Those are helpful.
I got one myself one time that said, difficult course,
Yeah.
but he was fair
Yeah.
and fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll take it.
I took it. I'm like, great. I like it.
I'm just looking. Here's one. I mean, it's still helpful. Lack of structure. I feel some things were best learned by trial and error. So that's helpful, you know.
It's constructive.
Yeah.
It's the unconstructive. It's like terrible course.
Yeah.
Instructor shouldn't teach. You know, they should never teach this course again, or, you know, things that are kind of very, maybe they were important to the person that was filling out the evaluation, but they're not constructive. Again, they're kind of mean-spirited sometimes. And I don't think in the moment, maybe they think maybe that's constructive feedback, but it really is not always that helpful. And it's what's interesting is when you have the Likert and it comes out as like, say, a 4 out of 5, but then in the free text comments, there's some very pointed, very negative comments like, well, this doesn't add up.
Yeah. Here's one of those not helpful at all. This person reminds me of a used car salesperson. So that's not helpful at all. I got a really hurtful one that said, I don't give students enough time, and I can't imagine giving them more time. And so what I did was I made a once a semester program director evening where I'm on Teams and they can come and chat with me. And I didn't know what else I could do. I have office hours. I have a booking system. I have all these things. And so that was the one thing I didn't have. So I added an open session. So we are going to continue on with Anna. She's finishing up her first year, and we just kind of want to get a student's perspective when you fill out your evaluations, what you're thinking about, and if you fill them out and you're really mad, or if you're in a good mood, or you try to fill them out in kind of a neutral headspace. But what do you try to take into account when you figure them out? Or are there instructors you like better than others? Does that weigh in? Or are you really just thinking about the content and the course and what you got out of it?
Whenever I do evaluations, I really try to think about who's going to be reading them and what are they going to do with that information. So I really want to leave constructive feedback and honest information about the course. I do try to go in with a neutral headspace, think about what I've really experienced, and then also the perspective of other students. Even though this is my own course evaluation for my own personal experience, I try to look at the big picture and see, like, what's this instructor like? How are they with students? How are they when they present their content? So just big picture stuff. I try to leave that constructive criticism. I fill out the comments. I feel like a lot of students have a tendency to not fill out comments. They just want to click through, get it done. Like a checklist. But I think the best way to do it is to leave some feedback. We pay to go to school, and we want good instructors. We have good instructors. And if people want things to be better, they need to leave that feedback.
It's really great to hear that you consider the purpose of the evaluation.
Do you feel like the purpose of the evaluation is explained to you, or do you just get that on your own?
I feel like I just kind of get that on my own. I understand it's something that I need to complete, but occasionally we'll have an instructor come in and say, oh, just a reminder, you need to do your course evaluations. If you do them, this is going to help us to better and give you guys better content. And, if you guys want things a certain way, or if you like learning is a different way, then you need to include that on there. That way we can provide better for you.
Is there any, I don't want to say reward but incentive to fill out an evaluation or anything that happens? Is it required, I guess, to fill out?
It is required. There's not necessarily an incentive. If we don't fill out an evaluation, we have a comp day taken away from us. So it's more like, oh, I have to do this. Because we only have a limited amount of comp days to take off if we get sick or something like that.
Because my program is online, and I have a very low response rate, and I have to keep reminding them, and I'll go over some of the stuff that I do. And eventually, I found that if I open it 3 weeks before the semester ends and leave it open for 2 weeks, there's different things that we've tried, and send a reminder, 2 times within that 2 weeks. But there's nothing I can do. I can't take away a comp day. I'm not going to knock their grade type of thing. Can't. But so that's a good incentive. You don't want to lose that.
Right.
That comp day.
I think people feel a little more pressure to get that done.
Yeah.
And hopefully with more consideration into what they're putting into it. So.
Do you feel like the evaluation addresses what you'd like to see it addressed? Are there any comments that you write in routinely that maybe could be a question on the evaluation, or the comments kind of vary depending on the course?
I feel like, so all of the comments, the questions asked in the evaluation is the same across the board for each class that I fill it out. If I feel that things have been presented well, there's not, much that I would change, that I write that down. And I'll just say, good, agree, strong. I like the way this was done. I'll type it in. I like that this information was up to date. The instructor provided questions in class and example slides. That helps me learn. It's not the same for everyone.
Yeah.
But I feel like the questions on there are very helpful.
Okay.
And I wouldn't really add anything to it.
Are there constructive feedback? Is there constructive feedback that you give, that you realize you give often? Like the same stuff? Or it just varies depending?
I think it just varies.
Okay.
Every instructor has a different style of teaching. Yeah. Some I feel like I vibe with more.
Yeah.
Some I don't. And that's going to be the same, I think, for everyone. There are different learning styles that people really agree with or don't agree with, or they do well in this person's class or they struggle in this person's class, but their teaching style is different. So it really varies. I don't think I leave the same feedback across the board. It really is instructor dependent.
I'm curious from a student perspective, if you you fill out an evaluation, in your mind, how soon do you think something's going to happen or change because of that evaluation? And do you feel like things do change because of feedback on evaluations?
I would expect that change to come the next semester if we have that instructor again. I would expect that the feedback has been read in that 2 or 3 week period, that we either don't have classes or that the evaluations were submitted. I would hope to see those changes the following semester so that people can improve their scores and learn better. As far as seeing that actually happen, I feel like, so I have had a couple consecutive instructors in this program so far. I haven't seen a significant change in the way that I would hope. In some classes, I don't feel that needs to change. I feel like I have an easy time with the information. They do a great job teaching it, but sometimes I feel like the feedback didn't really get used, and I would hope to see that shift.
Yeah, trust in the process is important, I think from student perspective.
Yeah, and sitting on the evaluations committee, I think that's really helpful feedback for us to hear. So thank you for sharing that.
The time perspective sometimes is, maybe it's just miscommunication. We don't talk about it enough. Like what happens after you hit I'm done, and what the real time frame is.
Exactly.
From that to
implementing,
like professional development occurring, meetings with individual faculty occurring, and then change takes time, right? It's like this course, I think, say you're in a fall semester and you fill out a course evaluation, and then you have the same person teaching in the spring. Well, that spring course was developed before the fall semester finished, right? Yeah. So if it's course-related changes, those probably aren't even going to happen in the next semester. So it may be 2 semesters away before change happens. So I think that's a good feedback, I think, for communication points.
Do you ever hear people saying kind of to the other ends of that, it doesn't matter, it's not going to change for us anyways, you know? There
is a handful of people that sometimes I do hear like, oh, I'm just going to do it, but it doesn't matter. They're not going to read it. They're not going to change how they teach. This is just how they are. Some people I hear, do like me, and they leave that constructive feedback. They want to see change, and they hope to see it soon.
Yeah. I was talking about it earlier before you joined us, that this is a teaching profession where we want to be good instructors. So we do really, really appreciate that constructive feedback, obviously not the harsh, negative, mean comments, but anything constructive. How do you feel about the length of the course evaluation? I think ours is probably 15 to 20
I think it's adequate.
Okay.
It's nothing that I feel like I really have to take time out of my day to do it. I can get it done within 15 minutes, and I can leave the feedback that I want. It's nothing that I feel like is a burden for me to do as a student.
What do you think is a good length? 15, 10?
Yeah, I think, you get beyond maybe 10 questions. And
Yeah.
I think oftentimes the questions are almost duplicative.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, that question sounds just like question
Mm-hmm.
2. So I think the shorter you can make them, but still get the information you need is better.
And do you like how it's broken up? I see this across evaluations, the questions about the course itself, and then the questions about the instructor's knowledge and teaching of that course. And
Yes, I think that provides the opportunity for students to leave feedback for a particular instructor if they feel like something needs to change or be adjusted, or if they really liked something about that instructor, that's the time to mention it so that they can continue teaching that way. Whereas maybe they didn't perform as well in the course as they had hoped. That could be, a struggle with the student, understanding the information. Maybe they didn't use the resources provided.
Mhm.
And that's the opportunity to answer some questions there where, oh, I wish this was different.
mm-hmm.
Maybe not necessarily the teaching style from the instructor, but more about the course content itself.
Or say they enjoyed, the course content, but maybe not the teaching methods. Do you like questions about teaching methods? Like if the instructor used a variety of teaching methods so that you can give feedback that maybe you liked watching videos or having case studies and different kind of learning modalities?
Yeah, I think that's a great question for students to answer because everyone does have a different learning style. So maybe an instructor likes to just do PowerPoint slides the entire course.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else you see. There's no pictures or videos. Not everyone learns that way.
Yeah.
And so having the opportunity to speak up and say something about it, I would like to see more videos. I would like to see pictures or graphs. I would like to do questions in class. Maybe that would be more helpful for them.
Is there anything you wish was on an evaluation that every time you fill one out, it's like, well, I wish they had asked me this.
Not necessarily. If I feel like something's missing, I'll leave it in the comments. I think you had mentioned it earlier, I believe, about when you give students an option to score a class or an instructor, strongly agree, disagree, neutral.
Yeah.
Maybe taking away that neutral.
Yeah.
And forcing people to make a decision so that they can provide some actual constructive feedback. You either like it or you don't.
Right.
You don't just show up to anesthesia school.
Yeah.
You're just like, right.
It's fun. I'm here, whatever.
Right. So a lot of us were, I think you had said, overachievers.
Yes.
And
In a good way.
in a good way. And so if there's something we don't like, we need to speak up about it. If there's something we do like, we should, address it.
Yeah. And so what you said just reminded me of something else. So the last school I worked at before MTSA, and I'm just going to pull it up here. So a few other schools too, go from poor to excellent, so it's poor, below satisfactory, satisfactory, above satisfactory, and excellent. And before where I was, I'm just going to tell you, it was, and it's such a silly thing, but it went from excellent to excellent, very good, good, fair, poor. So, to hear you were good was not bad, right?
Yeah.
It's better than hearing you're satisfactory,
Right.
whatever the equivalent. To hear you're very good is still nice,
Yeah.
and then better than hearing above satisfactory, I think, in your mind. I don't know. For me, it was. When I saw these terms, I was not as excited to hear them above satisfactory if you don't get the highest excellent, They both had excellent. But I think there's something, do you like any of those? Would you rather say someone is good as opposed to above satisfactory? Is there any, does that mean anything to you? I don't know.
It does. I think it can represent, a teacher's ability to teach and how well they are with students, but I also think it leaves room for interpretation. So if you say they're good, maybe you actually think they're great.
What does that mean?
Right. But
Yeah.
what does that
Exactly.
mean? What's lacking?
Okay.
What is good?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. So I think we've talked about a few things here. So we kind of all agree 10 to 12, 15 questions is ideal. Having separate sections for faculty and course.
Free text options.
Free text options. Maybe we all agree to get rid of that middle
It's worth
neutral. And then, interest in the subject questions I think are always good, to see. We asked about the materials. I think the grade question is interesting just to me. I know everyone in anesthesia school pretty much gets an A with a few B's, but there is that if they get a B, they may be more inclined to rate bad, be one of those down the board bad scores. And then we've just kind of gone over what's constructive and why it's constructive and why we want that constructive. And then I just wanted to share with faculty, I came across a couple good things to share with students. Does the faculty here give time in class to complete evaluations?
Not designated time.
Yeah. So that's one thing I think you can do if you want to just make sure students are focused on it and, really concentrating on that and not doing it while their kids are running around or trying to drive home from clinical or something like that.
I think for new faculty, especially, I think it's important when you first receive evaluation results to weigh things.
Yeah.
If you have 50 students in a class and you get a return rate, you get 40 back.
Yeah.
Okay. And 37 of those are pretty good.
Yeah.
And you have one or two bad comments. Not that you should ignore those comments. You should sit back, reflect, and try to think, okay, what could I do? Where could this have come from? But, look at the good.
Yeah.
If it's weighted heavily towards being good, take that as a good evaluation.
Yeah.
And then try to use the negative comments constructively for yourself for improvement. But I think more often than not, like you said, we don't get up in the morning thinking, I want to come here and ruin your semester, right? We want to do well. So, and more often than not, the evaluations are overwhelmingly good. Mm-hmm. So don't let those few, sometimes negative comments, because as you said, sometimes maybe your learning style is just different. And I can't be everything to everyone.
Right.
That's it. You're not going to be everything to everyone.
Be kind to yourself. Yeah. Absolutely. It's like, were you, years later, but think of your clinical day. You can have a wonderful day and do one thing wrong and that, of course,
what you remember.
Yeah. And same for us. So we have to be kind to ourselves and point out the good that we do. Otherwise, we can't. We can learn and grow from the bad. Yeah. But always, even now, especially when you're new faculty, but even as you grow, when I got told I was not around for communication, I felt like a dagger went into my chest. And then I thought, oh my goodness, I am so available, if anything, I need to be more available for my family. So do you feel like, the faculty here could do a better job just explaining to the class the value of the evaluation?
I feel like the faculty does a good job explaining the value. I think maybe giving, like you said, some some class time to do the evaluations would be helpful. Maybe at the beginning of one class, be like, okay, we're going to take 15 minutes. I want everyone to take out their computer and you complete your evaluations. Once we're all done, we'll start class. Yeah. That way you're confirming everyone's getting it done. You've got all of the information you need. You don't need to wait 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And you can take that information and do what you need to with it.
Yeah.
And I do think it's important from administrator perspective that if there is a course and there's a definite theme of something that needs to be fixed, I think to build trust, I do think it's important in a respectful way that's not throwing that faculty under the bus.
Yeah.
But to give feedback to the student body to say, we heard you,
Yeah.
and here's some things that we're doing to make improvements that you may not see.
That would be great.
And this may help next year's cohort. And thank you for helping next year's cohort.
Yeah.
But we heard you, we see this, so I think that's important. And you tell me, is that important?
I think that's very important. I think sometimes we feel like we're the students on one side, there's faculty on the other, and maybe we don't get all the feedback of what you guys are doing with
Behind
this
the
information. And so maybe communicating what is being done or what has been done with our student representatives, and then they can communicate that with us. That would be really helpful.
We used to have, and I can't remember, maybe we called it like town hall meetings. And that's what, if it was something major, like a major theme, then faculty and administrators would meet with the students and discuss the situation, something like that. So you would hear, and same thing, no names, just what this was the issue and this is what's being, just know that we're aware of it and we're working on it type of thing. So for faculty, I think it's just important to remind the students that this is the student's voice, and we value your feedback. It can improve the courses. It's anonymous. All feedback helps, but really it's that constructive feedback that we want. If it's not respectful and constructive, people aren't really going to take it seriously or look at it. Specific feedback is best when we know exactly, sometimes it's so specific that I know exactly what student wrote it, even though it's anonymous, but I say, okay, fair point. I know what upset you and can make that better, or I know what made you happy and I'm glad I did that. So we all want to be better and learn and grow, and evaluations are so important for us to do that. So thank you both for being here. Any final thoughts, comments?
Well, thank you for having me and getting a student's perspective. I think it's helpful to have my perspective. And it makes me feel heard, and like our voices matter and there are changes being done. Not necessarily that changes have to be done, but it's nice to see.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you coming on, and I hope you'll come on to more of these too. Okay.
Thank you both. It's been fun.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we look forward to you joining us next time on our next Scholarly Chronicles. So we will see you soon.